This is what I remember, and remember clearly to this day, as if it were had just happened. I was in a place, and I don't know what this place was. It'd be really nice if things had labels on them. Then you could say I was in heaven or limbo or whatever. I have no idea. I was in a place, and the place was all one color. It was all kind of a light blue, a blue-gray color. Sort of if there was a ground, sea, sky, everything was just one color. And I was very interested. Dianne Brinkley talks about this as well. He mentioned it last month if you were here. And he also has in his book, Saved by the Light, which I read, and I found this was fascinating. And you find this color coming up actually quite a lot. Phyllis Atwater talks about it as well, as do some others. So I was in this place. No terrain, just a place. Over here on this side of me, there was something. I always just say, a being. I never saw the being. If it had a label on it, I didn't get to see it. All I did was feel the being. And the feeling was of size and power, strength over here. And so I was constantly feeling the being. And the next part was the part which had a tremendous, probably the most tremendous effect, was the life review. I said, now thanks to Neil and thanks to the reading that I've done, now I've got a label for it. The life review. I have to say, it's a little, for me, a bit different than what Dianne Brinkley described. He talks about experiencing every last detail of your life, if you remember that. Even to the point of how many hairs in the nose of the doctor that looked at you. I think it would be a terribly boring life review. For me, it was all about significant events. And it wasn't a watching of these events, it was a re-experiencing. Those of you who read this literature, this is the way it was. It was being there again, in the event, re-experiencing it. But it was from, again, this was much neater when it was my personal experience. Dianne Brinkley had it, and thousands of others have too. It was experiencing these events from 3 different perspectives, angles, experiences simultaneously. One was my version of events. I was just there again, and it was really focusing on what was going on inside of me, what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what my motivations were. And these actually were all times of conflict. And so I was there, with my thoughts, rationalizations, again in times of conflict. It was kind of the normal kinds of things when you're in deep emotional conflict with someone. Sometimes somebody goes way too far, they push you just too far, they've been such a rotten person for so long, and you've had it up to here, and finally you let them have it. And you feel good about it, because they've been asking for it. And you feel perfectly justified. But then I had the other person's experience, and I felt the sting and the pain of those words. And I realized these words have meaning and power, and they're just as painful whether the other person realizes they have it coming or not. And then since I was in the middle of their thoughts and their motivations, they didn't think they had it coming. And I felt that sting, and that was a very shocking and kind of painful thing to go through. But then, the real shocker was the third view. And this was what was really happening. Sometimes I call it God's eye view. Not my lies to myself and self-justification, or somebody else's lies to themselves and their self-justification, but seeing through it all, and really seeing, shockingly, how much we all lie to ourselves. So I'm extrapolating from me to all we. Not my problem, it's us. No, it really was how we do this. And how the worst part of it for me was how we believe our own lies to ourselves. We're that good at lying to ourselves. Well, that was the worst thing. And Atwater talks about this for herself, about having it be kind of a hellish experience. I'll say it was true. It was shocking. I felt, in a way, humiliated. I thought, I felt like a failure. It was a self-judgment that I had really failed as a human being not to be aware of this. and to be oblivious to all of this. And this is where the being came in. And the message that came in was, it's okay, you're only human. Which meant to me, it's okay because that's what humans do. You're merely being a human. Whereas I think I interpreted I was a mere human, and that's what hurt too. I thought I had far greater aspirations than mere humanity. I thought I was living in, well, that's how much you can lie to yourself. So to me, it's okay, you're only human, but I thought it's not okay because we can do better. And so for me, the real point was, well, when it was all over with, the point was, when I'm in this position again, I want it to be different. I don't want to have this sense of failure and not being sensitive and aware. What I want the judgment to be well, at least he tried. There's not much comfort, but it was a step up anyway. And so, yeah, the message from the being was comforting. Then after that, I received a series of revelations about my own family. My parents, my brother, my sister, myself. And at last I understood the family dynamics. We were just kind of a typical screwed up, dysfunctional family. Kind of ordinary stuff. And I've always been kind of resentful of my parents. I thought they really hadn't done a very good job at being parents. And now I saw what was really going on, and I realized they were just flawed human beings doing the best they could with the limitations they had, which was no worse than I'd just seen about myself. Which was really nice because years of anger, festering anger, were gone.
This love, this energy, whatever I'm in, that is the truth, that is what the universe is made of, that is the truth of existence, and I realized that is what people call God or whatever we want to call it. I realized this is the truth. And once I realized that, oh, wow, this is the truth, then I remember thinking to myself that, oh my God, I didn't know that love was the truth. I was an atheist before, and maybe sometimes I've been selfish and so forth, but I never realized that there's actually a truth in the universe, and that truth is love. So as soon as I said that, oh my God, I didn't know, I fell into, I don't know how it happened, because I felt guilty or because maybe I've heard some theories that maybe I'd been separated from that love. But either way, because I said, oh my God, I didn't know, I fell into a life review. And these were the classic one where I have images right in front of my eyes or whatever I am, a point of consciousness. And I start seeing images of me where I'm hurting other people. And like some of the first images I see is like where I'm really like angry, like yelling at my mother and she's crying. I'm just yelling at her and throwing all my anger at her and she's just broken down and crying. And I also see an example where I'm hurting an ex-girlfriend. There'd been, I think I'd done something horrible, like cheated on her or something at a party or something, and she just found out. This is the moment when she learns, and I see how the impact of my action really hurts her. And again, I'm on the receiving end, and I can really feel her pain. I'm on the receiving end of my actions. And then this life review continues all the way down till third grade, where this is actually a moment that I had totally forgotten. This was like, I'm 27 at this point, and this was in third grade. So I'd totally forgotten this instance, but it was an instance where I was during the break in school, I was teasing a smaller girl. So if I'm third grade, maybe she was second grade. I'm not sure. But either way, I'm now seeing this event play out in front of me, and I'm seeing her standing against the wall, and I'm going like, nah, 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 and I'm really like teasing her. I don't remember, calling her names and so forth and teasing her. And I just, she's like standing against the wall like, oh no, please, please, no, no, no. And I'm now in this experience, I'm on the receiving end, meaning I'm her, and I'm feeling the pain of my hurtful actions on her. I'm feeling how it feels like for her to receive my actions that are very hurtful. And not only do I am feeling her sorrow, her pain, But I'm also kind of sensing, or telepathically, I'm understanding how my actions are impacting her future life. I'm now seeing, sensing, and feeling that she will become much more shy, much more introverted for the rest of her life because of my actions. But not only do I kind of sense and feel that, I also now feel the pain and sorrow in her parents, because she's now going to turn out as a more shy and inward person. So I'm really feeling the full consequences. I'm really feeling not just that my actions are changing the life of this little girl, but I'm also feeling the pain and sorrow in her parents, because their child, I mean, the person they love and care for, is taking a turn in her life for, well, not what they expected. That they would like, maybe a child with a, happy life and maybe a little bit outgoing, so you can, I mean, everybody wants the best for their children. But so in this instance, I'm really feeling how my actions are, causing ripples far away, not just her life, but her parents' life, and, her whole family as such, also her, everyone around her in that sense. So I really get a full spectrum of the full consequences to all the links in the chain to my actions of just, spending a few minutes in the schoolyard and teasing a girl, which seems kind of maybe something a lot of people have done during school. There's a lot of, I did high school myself in Colorado, and I saw a lot of stuff, during our after school. Kids do a lot of funny and crazy stuff. So, this was really something that I had totally forgotten about. But now in this life review, where it's really, the sensation of seeing this and feeling the pain that I'm causing her is really, it's really 100 times stronger than anything you can imagine here in the body. So now I'm really like, oh my God, this is really big what I did, hurting her and changing her life. That is such a big thing. And this action really spread into hurting not just her, but everyone around her, everyone who knew her, who was connected to as a family too. So really, really, really painful to realize the full effects of all your actions. And so after I had went through all these personal things that I had done in my life, I now kind of had a review of the world. This was now where I saw, instead of seeing my actions, I now saw, I kind of saw images of all the pain and suffering in the world. So the war, the famine, the hunger, the suffering, people in Africa dying, tanks, shooting, killing people. I mean, I just saw all these images of all the pain that's being created in our world right now, or at that time. And that was like too much for me to handle. I mean, one thing for me was to take in the consequences of my own actions, but now I had to take in the pain, all the pain and suffering in the world. And this was where I was like, oh my God, this is too much pain for me to handle. And I was like, I have to do something to stop this. And that's when I said, oh my God, I have to do something to stop this pain and suffering. And as soon as I said that, then the distressing review changed. And all of a sudden I saw in front of me, the light in front of me, and I saw this kind of path where I could see myself walking towards the light by doing good and trying to help others and make the world a little bit better. And as soon as I just knew that was my mission, that was what I had to do with the rest of my life. And yeah, when I came back, that's what I've been trying to do pretty much. So
I was standing there kind of still wondering, first of all, where I was at and wondering what I was doing there. And I knew that because I wasn't allowed to look back, I knew I must have been dead. There was no fear whatsoever. It was almost like your mother putting her arm around you and just sending her love to you, bringing you into this world. In front of me was a cloud, and it was really different because the cloud wasn't very far away. Now, I've heard people say that it must have been some kind of a veil. The color of it was, when you look at a pearl white color, it is very pure, and it was bright, extremely bright. What happened next was something that is very hard to talk about. I watched a video of my life. It wasn't a video that came out in a projection screen. It was a video in my head, but the thing about this video was I lived it as the video was being done of my life. I watched myself from the day I was born, from birth, all the way until I was 28 years old. I watched my parents raising me. I watched my brothers and sisters. I watched activities that we went to. I watched all the time and effort that my parents put into me, teaching me sports. I watched good things that I had done, but I also watched bad things that I did. One thing that I noticed that really hurt was the fact of how I treated my wife at the time that I died. I wasn't very good to her. It was all about me. It was not about my family. It wasn't about my wife. It was all about me and how I could get ahead and how much money I could make. And I realized that what I was doing was wrong. It wasn't one of the better things that I watched, but it was something that was real. This was an experience that has really changed my life, because as a businessman, you always want to get ahead. And many times you step on people along the way, and it is not the way it's supposed to be done. We're supposed to help each other in our jobs. We're supposed to help our friends. We're supposed to help people we come in contact. And this was made so vivid in my mind that I could have done better. And I know I could have done better, but I didn't. When the video was over and I was reviewing what I had done, there was nobody to talk to, nobody to give an excuse to, nobody to discuss what had happened or what situation you were in. It was what it was, and it was very real. And I had accepted the fact that it happened. But one thing that I want you to know is it was done with love. Here on earth, we're not perfect. We're all learning things every single day. And the best thing that we can do is learn from our mistakes. My dream at this point in my life is to have a better report when I go back to my Father in heaven. And I know that's who I was with. It was just such a warm feeling.
In that moment when you merge with light, it's the most awesome experience. And the only way I can describe it is that piece of scripture speaks about joy unspeakable and full of glory. Today I spend a lot of time helping people to transition from hospices. And what I bring is, you're about to experience the joy of light and love. So I merge with the light, and I'm feeling absolutely amazing and exhilarating, and I'm aware of this light, that I've become a part of the light. And then the thought again says, well, how do you move about in this environment? And instantly I'm moving again. And now I come to what may have looked like a Roman, the Romans built those big pavilions with those pillars. And in those days, televisions were this big and they were cumbersome. I obviously had never seen a full screen, but the screen was probably as big as the length from here to here. And the screen appeared, and when it appeared, it began to scroll. And the screen was divided into 3 columns. The column on the left was my life the way I had written it. Don't let anybody tell you God writes your life for you. Oh, no. He may have input, The left-hand side was my life as I had planned it. In the middle of the screen were all the conditions that came to me in this life in order to be able to fulfill what is on the left. And that's where I started laughing. It was really quite funny. I'm like, how could I have been so stupid? What was wrong with me? Because when I looked at what I had set, and I looked at what I had done with the conditions to help me accomplish it, I was in my way. And I'm here to tell you today, get out your way. And your way is full of all the things you want. One of the first things that I observed between these two parts of the screen was the fact that God gave me free will. And I'm wondering, why in the world, in all of his wisdom, did he do that? Because you see, one of the things I discovered is I knew how to pray. I grew up in a family where both grandparents had churches, so they taught me how to pray real well, you see, but they didn't tell me anything about meditation. So I'm looking at the screen, and I'm seeing the conditions that are intended to give me experiences that will help me to change. And I'm watching myself on my knees before Almighty God like a beggar. Please, 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 take it away. It's too hard. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? And then this will that we have, but what I really want is to go down to the shop that sells ice cream and eat a whole lot of ice cream so that I can get my attention away from what I have to do. And believe it or not, we do have this free will to a certain extent. So I watched the many ways I put obstacles in the way of my learning and in the way of my transition from one place to the other. We come to the end of the screen and I have a lot of questions. And the screen re-scrolls again, and only now they have dropped 7 lifetimes in there. So I can see why I don't understand so much of what's going on in my life. And one of the first things I noticed was my husband at the time, the marriage was having, I've been married twice, the marriage was having some problems. And one of the first things I noticed is that we had 3 lifetimes that we had lived together, and I was the one causing the problems, not him. So in the lifetime I was in, it was my turn, right? People harm. And that created a whole different dynamic on how I looked and I observed my marriage.
Today, I would like to talk about the life review and the near-death experience. If you haven't seen my first video about my full near-death experience, you might want to check that out first. But the life review is particularly profound because it teaches us how we could have lived differently, what we could have done more of in this life, and what we should avoid. So the first part of my life review was this growing oneness that I felt with everyone. So I'd walked around feeling, as many of us do, largely disconnected, lonely, lost in my own thoughts and my own way of looking at the world. And when I felt this connection with other people, suddenly I felt released of that prison, of that bubble of me, 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 me. And I think that is the cause of so much depression and so much pain in the world, is that self-focus. And as I felt this connection with other people, I felt happier. Then God, the light, showed me the particular hearts and minds of people around me and showed me how I might have been different. So at that time in my life, I was 22 years old and concerned with particular fashions, and I didn't necessarily want to get to know someone if they didn't go to my university or if they didn't wear the same type of clothes as me or like the same type of documentaries and movies and books. And that was an immature young way of looking at the world, but I saw how my thoughts enclosed me in this dark little bubble, and they harmed me. They also kind of harmed other people too, because there were lovely people around me who often prayed for me or wondered about me, and I didn't take the time to get to know them. And I saw into their hearts and minds, and I thought, oh, how amazing if only I had had a conversation with that person, my life would have been brighter, their lives would have been brighter, and I saw how everything could have changed in that moment. I hadn't harmed a lot of people at that time in my life, so I didn't have to live through a lot of harm that I had caused. I really just saw that my self-focus, my depression, my judgment of others kept me from experiencing the joy and love and connection of knowing people who are really wonderful all around me. That stuck with me throughout the rest of my life. I knew that the heart is what matters. The heart is way more important than the image that someone projects, the car that they drive, what they're doing in life. Like, the heart is so important. And many near-death experiencers say love is all that we take with us, and I'd like to explain a little bit more about that. That is the love that you do in this world, the love that you give, not necessarily the love that you receive. That's what other people are giving. So the love and the joy and the kindness that you spread across this world, you get to see how your wonderful actions, your loving actions, your supportive actions had this ripple effect to other people. So say you helped one person grow and heal and have a better life, then you get to see how that affected their kids and their families and their friends and people all around them. And it's a beautiful experience to see that. That's what you want to relive in a life review, is all the good that you've spread, not all the pain that you've spread. So it's really kind of basic on that level. The other thing that you don't have to experience in the life review is all the pain that other people have caused you. And that was a relief, because who wants to relive that? That is gone. And when I say love is all that matters, yes, you're taking the love that you've given to this world, not the pain that other people have caused you. That's the heroic soul's journey, to soldier through that and to continue to help people no matter what we've experienced in life. I have connected with my father in the afterlife, and that was the beginning of realizing that I had mediumship abilities. And when I saw his life review, it was much more extended. So his life review looked at every moment and every choice, and it was almost as if it was on this big screen, and little bubbles would be pulled out, and he'd observe how his life might have been different, other people's lives might have been different. My father died very bravely and with a lot of joy. He was certain about where he was going, and he didn't want to bring other people down, so he didn't talk about his physical pain or anything. He just cracked jokes and had a good time, and journeyed out of this world without morphine and just trying to make me feel good. And that was amazing to watch. I think it's probably pretty painful to watch someone die who isn't at peace, and he was at peace, and yet he still had to look at all the ways that he might have lived differently, had a different life, and he does want to reincarnate and return, and his soul wants to continue its journey of still spreading joy in that way, but perhaps doing more and accomplishing more in this world. And that was an interesting experience for me to see that extended life review through his eyes.
Well, there was a lot of lessons, but the three most primary lessons that I figured I felt as almost the life review were like gifts to me. The first was acceptance, because I saw my entire life, and I got to see it through other people's perspectives, through that exchange, and I got to see it in such a way that I understood, I suddenly knew who I was, and I could accept that this is who I am, and that I may not be a perfect person, but I could accept that this is who I am right here, right now, and that I can work on myself. I have a lifetime to work on myself, and I'm probably going to have more lifetimes to work on whatever it is my agenda is at that time, in future lives or past lives. And I feel that so that acceptance was a big lesson for me, because with acceptance you can be comfortable in your skin and your surroundings and talking to everyone else. And with that life review and those interactions, I saw acceptance of other people as well. Before my near-death experience, I was pretty brash, didn't have much understanding of other people's point of views, and I was very self-centered. I had my own view, and it was self-contained. And if you didn't agree with my point of view, then I didn't care, and I would just you weren't much a part of my life if you didn't believe in what I believed in. So, but in the life review, I got to see that there are other people's paths that don't have anything to do with me, and that they can live their life, and and now I have a tolerance for their path that I didn't have before, because I saw that they have their path and they have their purpose in life, and it doesn't necessarily have to agree with my path and my purpose, and I can be tolerant of that. And that was a big lesson for me as well. I suddenly could accept who I was, and I could be tolerant of others. And we're going to exchange paths, we're going to cross paths, we're going to interact, and many times I may not agree with their personal views or their what they're doing in life or what they want to achieve in life, but that's all right. In fact, I think that a lot of life's interactions, I think all of our life's experiences need to be enjoyed, the good and the bad, because we're going to meet some people that are going to push our buttons and maybe push us to the brink of anger or something like that. And that's a good time to look at what caused that, what brought that up within me. So they could be a teacher to me, Mm-hmm. And I've had some really good teachers that have pushed a lot of those buttons, and so I've learned from that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a lot more tolerant. Mm-hmm. I also saw that we can all experience something together. You and I could have an experience, a shared experience. But the truth of that experience to me is going to be different than the truth of that experience to you. And you're going to know the truth of that experience through your heart, because when you hear your truth, your heart sings about it, And that's the way I gauge my truth, is through my heart. When my heart sings, I know it's my truth. And a lot of us have passions that a lot of times we repress in life. And I think after an experience, you tend to not repress that anymore, because it's another indicator of the interactions that we're going through in life, and a way to just squeeze all the juice out of that interaction so that you can learn from all of it.
Karma is not just a concept or a belief. For me, it was absolutely real. I had to feel what I did to others in some way, shape, or form. I had to give that back. I had to go through the pains and the emotions on other people that I may have put them through things. But going back to like being out of my body, and this idea that, oh, wow, this is what it means to die. It's just so odd, because we're kind of here. So I was still here, but I was on a different, let's say, a channel, a different bandwidth. I was beside this world, but the world still all looked the same, but I was no longer in time and space. I was outside of this slow process that we go through called time, and I was no longer within that. So everything was perceived from like one moment, and my life started to become a review. So as the review goes, the review started out slowly, but then it started to speed up, and then everything started to come into this meshed one moment of time kind of thing. But not only did I review this life and the things that I did, realizing that I had basically messed up or done wrong all things that I kind of put for myself to do, as like before I came here. And I can't speak for anyone else other than my own self and my experiences. So everything I say is my thing, and I can't speak for other people. But for me, I set up this blueprint, like this plan, this path of life. And I set up challenges and things that I would do and things I'd have to achieve while being here. And it was very obvious that I failed through all of those challenges. I just was always running away from things. I never could, complete things. I would hurt people out of my own insecurities and my own fears. And I had a lot of fears too. And when I'm looking at this review, when I'm looking at this blueprint of life, I'm realizing, oh man, like I didn't even get one thing right. I totally messed it up. But there was no, we get this idea of like being judged or whatever. For me, I was the judge, I was the jury, I was the defense. I was all things that represent me judging myself. There was no authority saying, you did bad, you go here. Oh, you did good, you're allowed into heaven. Like that didn't exist. And the way I experienced it was there was no God in the sense of God being separate from me. I was one with that God. So everything was a part of it, not separate from it. There was nothing of a creator, but it was all creation that we all exist within. So the idea of like visiting God, I didn't have that experience. I just had the experience of knowing that I was God in a sense of being a part of creation. So a lot of NDEs and stuff, people talk about their own unique experiences. And I think it's so neat that we do have these unique experiences that all pertain to the individual person. But I think there's these universal truths too that people talk about and things like that we can kind of all relate to as well, which is really neat too, because it shows that, a lot of us are having these same kind of experiences from all different walks of life and all different parts of the earth. So it's neat to see how a lot of the same things do happen for a lot of us. And so I started to review my life, and I started to see the things. And not only did I see what I did wrong, but I felt what others felt when I did them wrong. But I also felt what others felt when I lifted them up, when I made them feel good. So it was as if I was almost one with them as well. Like everything like we perceive on earth is like separate, but from a higher place, it's not separate. It's all combined. It's all meshed in. It's all together. My action here will affect someone across a world that has no relation to me in some shape or form. Like we all have this effect over everyone else, but yet we still all are very individual and separate. That's the way that I kind of perceived it, as it's all just interconnected, but in a way we can't see from being in 3D reality. When you go above and beyond that into like, say, the spirit realm, if you want to call it that, you can now see the connections, the interlinking connections between all things and all people, but you need to be from that perspective. And so back to like, this review. Not only did I review this life, but I started to open up to like past lives as well. As we experience them linearly, time does not run in a line. Time is actually runs in circles, is really the true nature of time. And so I started to realize, we also have past lives, and we just don't have connection to those past lives, because in this life, we've put a veil over us so that we are disconnected from the past lives, so that we can focus ourselves here and then do what we can to develop and grow. One strong belief I have about our spirits and our souls is that our souls love challenge, because challenge creates expansion, and our soul loves to be challenged, and our soul wants to grow. So we are just 100% energy, but that energy will expand. And from my own personal experience, expansion happens at a faster rate. The more we're challenged, the more resistance we experience, and the more struggle we go through.
And I remember the conversation I was having with this ascended master. I say ascended master because I don't know what else to call him. He was an advanced being, a saint, I don't know. I mean, you categorize it any way you choose, but I remember looking up from this tree, and the only way I can describe this tree, for those of you who have ever seen the Game of Thrones, there is this tree in the Game of Thrones that is just magnificent. Well, this was just that. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I look out into the sky, the stratosphere of my life review. And from the moment I was born in a hospital to the moment I died at 11:11 p.m. on November the 11th in 1987, my life was before me. And all these moments in my life, these little moments that you just forget about. I mean, every moment of your life is recorded. You're watching your life review in this huge matrix, and over and over and over you see your life review, and you're not judging it as much as you're watching it with such compassion and such sympathy and such understanding. There is no judgment. That was the first thing I went, aha, there is no judgment. And I'm seeing the things I should have done that I didn't do, the things I could have done, I chose not to do, and the things I would have done if I'd only known better. But I didn't. And again, no judgment. In fact, if anything, what I felt inside, again, this invisible spirit or essence, what I felt inside was, you could have done better, Peter. You accepted it, and I went into my life review, and I could spend hours talking about my life review. I can talk about a few things here, but I remember I was in high school, and it was my birthday, and my sister, I was about to close my locker, and she was there, and she said, today's your birthday, happy birthday. I said, yeah. And she said, well, aren't you going to tell me, I'm your best friend, aren't you going to tell me I love you? And I'm looking around at all my football buddies, so we just go away, I don't want to talk about this now. And she said, well, come on, just tell me how much you love me. And I didn't say that. And that night, she was killed by a drunk driver. And that was the last time I saw my sister. And that moment when I'm looking down at that life review, that shoulda, coulda moment, I love you, did not come out of my mouth, did not come out of my lips. Those words I did not say. And so when I came back into this lifetime, there's not a day that goes by that when I hang up a telephone with a friend, no matter how young you are a friend or how old you are a friend in my life, I love you. That is something I learned on the other side, and it means the world to me. And it means the world to my new extended family friends, because they know what I've gone through. And they honor that I say I love you, and they know that I mean it. So that was a great lesson for me. I think another lesson for me, on the way to CBS interview, rock and roll music, windows down, crossing the bridge. I have a piece of gum, plop it in the mouth, flick out the wrapper into the Trinity River. And in slow motion, I watched this wrapper descend all the way down into the river and going down with the current, meeting other trash, Whataburger, Burger King, McDonald's, and Needles, cat litter. I mean, so much trash. And then I would watch other, wrappers come in, and there was all this toxic trash, garbage, going down the river, and I would watch the chemicals off the oil refineries go in and meet, the runoff would go in and meet the river, and this river would go to the lakes, and then all this trash would go to the ocean. And I watched all of this, and I thought to myself, we all can make a difference on this planet. One action, no matter how small it is, one action can have horrible effects on other people, because what I watched was children getting sick from the oil refineries and all the trash and all the debris, and all the environmental people were stepping in, and our government was just basically turning their cheeks, ignoring it for the sake of profit and greed. And I would see children dying because of the toxicity in their system from all this trash and debris. I could see our oceans being polluted. So for me, one person can make a difference. So, people make fun of me when I get the Gatorade and they're in their little six-pack and there's that plastic wrapping in there. I cut all that off and chop it up because I know it's going into the ocean. So these events over and over and over took place in my life. Again, not judging it, but seeing it and understanding it, that I witnessed my smallest deeds which had great impact on other people.
We are everything. We are conscious. We are part of everything. When you understand non-locality, if you really look at non-locality closely, there is no space. There is no expansion. There is no openness, this huge thing. The whole universe is located in one little singularity, one little spot. The whole universe is one thought being thought somewhere, okay? And we are all part of everything. If I injure the plant over there, I'm injuring myself, okay? I'm part of the whole. Each of our consciousness is a little piece of sand, and the big consciousness is the whole beach made of all the pieces of sand, all together. You bring all those little pieces of sand together, you have a huge consciousness called the beach. And that's how we have to see it. We are part of the whole. Pierre Chillard de Chardin, he said, we cannot rip a piece of the fabric apart from the whole and look at it. It's all one. There is no separation. This is something we study in the near-death experience studies. When we die, we have a life review. And the life review is not looking back at all the good things I did. It's looking back at, in every instance, when I had a choice and I could have done a more right thing or a less right thing, how did the other person feel? It's not how I felt, it's how did they feel in every emotional situation. And that's what our life review is. We get to sit in the other person's seat for every one of those experiences for our whole life and feel how they felt. So if we murdered somebody, we get to feel how they felt, okay? These are the things I know. I died and went to the other side, and it appears I can talk to people who are over there now. I know those two things are true. Now, the way I explain them, I don't have the science to back up all of that, but that seems very real to me. The afterlife is real, and those people are living over there, and they talk to us, and they still love us. And it seems to me it's all about love. And that's the thing, it's got to be in the middle. Everything is powered by love. I love what John Lennon says, all there is love. I love that thought because it is the truth. When I'm very much in love with people on the other side, and I talk to them, just like I talk to loved ones on this side. I mean, you know, it's very important talking. And that's the thing that moves across the veil is love. If there's no love, you're not going to get messages. You're not going to hear anything.
I was always real fortunate. I came from a wonderful home, had a wonderful childhood. My parents loved me desperately. And their love, you just, compared to this woman, you can't even compare it. When she came, she stood next to me and she extended her hand outward and she said, "Look there." And when I turned my head, I saw from the moment I was born, and I watched every second of my life from the moment I was born until I died. And it wasn't just seeing it, I lived it again, exactly the way I felt it the first time, but with a new sense of kind of intellectual understanding about how I could have done it different, what might have been better, and other things that I cared little about, that I didn't think made an impression on anybody's life at all, were very significant. And probably the most important was when I worked at a convalescent hospital in high school after school. And I used to give a lady graham crackers and milk before I'd leave the shift. And I had no idea how much I had changed her life, how grateful, how appreciative she was. And I thought it was so insignificant back at that time in the 11th grade, but it wasn't. It was like every spirit looking down and saying, "Thank you for doing this. This woman had nobody. No one loved her."
I'm here in this tunnel. And I looked upward towards the tunnel and I saw this bright light, and it was so light, it was like 1,000 suns all exploding at the same time. And I remember saying, that should be burning my retinas out. But it was so bright, I didn't even blink. I could just look at it, and it drew me in like a gentle magnet, pulling me down the tunnel. And as I got about halfway down the tunnel from where the light was, I immediately popped into a big giant sphere. It was about the size of our high school gymnasium. And I'm hovering in the sphere, in the center of the sphere, with a light next to me, and all around in every direction, top, bottom, right, left, were motion pictures of me, of my life and my lives, and all the things that went on through years and years of living. And every time I would focus on one, I would actually feel myself drawn into it. And I was reliving it then. But it was different than living it the first time, because not only did I know what I was doing, but I could feel the feelings of everyone I was interacting with. And this went on for what seemed like hours. And then all of a sudden I popped out back into the tunnel again. And now I'm being absorbed by the light. And the light says three things to me. The light says, Andy, don't be afraid. Andy, I love you. Andy, we love you. And when the light said, Andy, we love you to me, surrounding the light are countless billions of other lights. And I knew them all. And I said to myself, it's so good to be home, because I knew that I was home. That's where I belong.
I started drifting away from my body and moving through something that later, as a researcher, I could call a tunnel. At the time, I had no explanation for any of this because I was an atheist, and I didn't believe you could exist beyond your body. But I was moving through something that turned out to be the shape of a tunnel, and the next thing I knew, my grandmother was there. Now, she had been dead for 14 years, and I had never once believed that anybody existed beyond their death. And my grandmother just put her arms around me like she did when I was a child and pulled me into her chest. And the next thing I knew, we were re-experiencing all 19 years we were on the planet together. She died when I was 19. And I wasn't just experiencing these memories through my eyes or my heart. I could feel her too. I experienced everything she experienced, and I have a feeling that she experienced everything I did about the love we shared for each other. And I started moving away from her, but she told me, not with her mouth, but heart to heart, that she would always be there waiting for me. And then I was back, and it happened again a week later while suspended in the bed. This time I was awake when I separated from my body. I was crying hard. I was laying on my tummy, and I looked down and I saw her. It sure wasn't me. I was up near the ceiling. I looked down and I saw her crying in a bubble. And then I looked out into the space and I saw myself at about a year old crying just as hard in a bubble. And after looking back and forth about 3 times, I decided to go to the baby, that I didn't want to be her anymore. And as soon as I did that, it was like I let go of this lifetime. I felt this energy could just wrap itself around me and move into me and become me. And just like with my grandmother, this energy let me see through its heart and through its eyes. And now I can call it God. At the time, going from atheism to having this experience, I couldn't use a word, but now I know that was God comforting me. And together, we moved to the baby. And that baby was in a cloud that contained thousands of clouds, and in each, thousands of bubbles, and in each bubble was another event from my life. So we had the experience together of bobbing through the bubbles, and at the same time there was a linear sequence of the 32 years I had been here in this lifetime, and I kept hearing myself say, no wonder, no wonder. And that meant, no wonder you are the way you are. Look at the abuse you had as a child. And when I would think that, this energy would hold me tighter. And looking at it now, it was such a powerful experience that if that energy wasn't holding me, I don't think I could have survived. I think I just would have exploded. And together, what we re-experienced too was that my mother, who was the one that was very crazy and tormenting me, abusing me, I could feel and see and hear somehow all the abuse that she had had as a child. So there was like instant forgiveness because there was instant understanding. And then I was back here in this reality, and it's taken me 37 years to figure out and to integrate all of this wonderful stuff that happened to me in that experience.
But that sense of guilt is the veil across the sanctuary. Don't you dare come in. In order to, in all mysteries, when you're going to be initiated, there's somebody saying, don't you come in. You've got to fulfill this requirement, this requirement, this requirement, this requirement, then we'll let you in. And so you go through the mill. Why? Because you're saying to yourself, I won't wake up until I feel I deserve it. I won't wake up until I've made it difficult for me to wake up. So I invent for myself an elaborate system of delaying my waking up. I put myself through this test and that test, and when I feel it's been sufficiently arduous, then I may at last admit to myself who I really am. and draw aside the veil and realize that after all, when all is said and done, I am that I am, which is the name of God.